Okay, well, let's get started then. Today we're going to talk about our residential and commercial investments. You guys meet a lot of investors out there. A lot of people say they're investors and they want to invest. How are you guys answering them now? Do you understand all of the jargon lingo about investments? Do you understand how it all works? When they tell you what they're looking for, you need to know what they mean. You need to find out what their desired returns are and what their goals are, what their financial investment goals are. I sent you guys all our FRI investor questionnaire. If you guys would have that handy, please. I've got a copy of it on here as well, which I'll be screen sharing with you. But you guys look that over as well as we're going along and kind of figure out what it is that you want to know and what it is that you want to get out of these people to see if there's a lot of them are time wasters. Everybody who's ever invested in anything thinks they're an investor, right? So you guys talk to a lot of people who say, oh, I'm an investor. Yeah, I did this one time. Well, some of them really are investors. And I was talking to a young man last night who's going to be joining our company, and he was talking to me about standing out. One of the things we talk about being successful in this business is having a niche and standing out. And you guys know I say this a million times, but when you tell people, you meet someone and they say, oh, what do you do? And you say, I'm a realtor. They know a million realtors, right? So they're not impressed, and they're going to be polite, but eventually they're going to drift off because they're bored. So because there's a million of you and they know somebody and they have a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law and a cousin and everybody else who's a realtor, right? So what about though if you say I'm a realtor who specializes in investment properties. I'm a realtor who's certified in short sales and foreclosures. I think that stuff's going to be coming up here pretty big, don't you guys think? So we talk to people every day who have these forbearances and who have a lot of money coming due on their houses. Some of them have, like we talked about with our market update, some of them have equity in their houses and some of them don't, So let's go forward with this. We're going to start. I did this by PDF rather than a strict PowerPoint presentation, although that's how I drew it up originally. So we're going to look at it like that on my screen share. Which did not work, I don't think. Hold on one second. Boy, this is frustrating. All right, hold on one second. I'm working on it. Are you guys seeing my screen share or are you seeing my face?
Seeing your face on the right and it looks like your screen.
Yeah, both.
Blue.
Okay, so you can see the residential and commercial investments?
No.
Okay.
No.
I got you. I got you.
Windows wallpaper.
Just your wallpaper.
Okay, hold on.
How many screens you got, Ryan?
6? Just 2. But I'm trying to share. Hold on one second. I got into this mode here that I don't know how to get out of. Never been in that mode. I've never seen this mode before in my life.
What is it?
Well, I'm going to have to force stop this and get out of here. Guys, I'll be right back on. I got to get out of here.
Okay.
Okay.
It says I'm in screen sharing. I'm just sharing the wrong screen. So maybe that's what my problem is.
Mm.
Now I see. Sharing the screen that I was on. Okay. Huh.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
Got it.
There you
Now you
go.
got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well now I can't get this off of here. Here we go. All right, so you see now residential commercial investments?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome, okay. So let's get started. What we're gonna cover today, terms that you need to know, how to determine the value of an investment property, rates of return for cash and leverage properties, how to determine the best way to buy an investment, and commercial investments and the effect on end users. So let's talk about terms you need to know. We're going to go through those as we go along, but how to determine the value of an investment property. That is what people are going to ask you, right? They're going to say, well, I've got $200,000 to invest. I want to buy, everybody wants to buy that $200,000 house, right? And rent it out for $1,500 a month and make a return. And it's going to go up to $250 in 5 years. And, you know, that's a great investment in their mind. What's the best way for them to spend their $200,000 though? And this is where you actually add value and you bring value to someone, helping them because they don't know what to do typically. And they want to know, but they want to do something with their money. The stock market is volatile. Bonds, any kind of CDs, bonds, money markets, not bringing anything right now at all. It doesn't even keep up with inflation. So what are they doing with their money? What is the best way for them to spend their money? So we'll talk about that. The rate of return for cash and leverage properties, all they want to know is I have this much money. How much can I get from it, right? How can I turn that $200,000 into 20 grand a year, right? That's what they want to know. Whatever scale they're on, unless they're already a sophisticated investor, that's the kind of stuff that they want to know. How would determine the best way to buy an investment and commercial investments? Okay. With so many options, why do people invest in real estate? Anybody have any ideas besides what's there?
Make money.
There's a steady growth.
Okay. Intrinsic value, you guys know what that is? That means there'll always be a value to real estate. There'll always be something there, as opposed to buying a stock that could be a Tyco or Enron and just disappear on you one day. Okay, so there's an intrinsic value. There'll always be something. If you go buy that $200,000 house and rent it out, well, guess what? You'll never be homeless, right? You'll always have something. If you get kicked out of your current house, if everything goes sideways, there's something there. You can always sell that for something, right? Even if it's a third of what you paid for it, like it happened if you bought in 2006, right? But you can always sell it for something. So that's something. Volatility, it's not as volatile. It typically over time is going to appreciate, as the stock market does as well. Most things do, but it typically is going to appreciate over time. And the status, who doesn't want to be an investor, right? That's what they tell you when they meet you. I'm an investor. And you say, oh yeah, what do you have investments in? And they say nothing. Then what does that mean? But if they say, oh, I own a couple houses and blah, 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 that makes them feel good. They tell their friends that. Their friends think they're rich, right? So people feel there's a status to being an investor. Cap rate. You guys have heard cap rate before. Raise your hand if you've heard cap rate before. Everybody's heard cap rate. You guys know what it means without looking on here? Who knows what it means? Not you, Vivian. Who knows what it means?
The way investors can calculate their return.
Right. That's the most important thing to them, right? They want to know the capitalization rate is the investment income based on the income the property is expected to generate. So it's, it's the rate of return. So if I have $1 million to spend, I want my cap rate and I want to make $100,000 a year, 10% on that. I want my cap rate to be 10, right? So I can make 10% of that. I'm capitalizing on my money that I have, right? So if I invest $1 million into a 10 cap property, that's going to make me $100,000 a year. Okay. If I invest 100,000 into a 10 cap condo somewhere, that's going to make me $10,000 a year. Okay. You guys see? It's calculated by dividing the investment's net operating income by the current market value. We'll go over net operating income here shortly, but it's calculated by dividing the net operating income by the current market value. So if I say the net operating income for this is $100,000 and I divide it by the $1 million market value, that's where I get my 10 cap. Okay. As the price is higher, the market value is higher. What happens to my cap rate, assuming it stays at $100,000? Let's say I have to pay $1.2 million for that $100,000. What's my cap rate then?
Goes lower.
Well, tell me what it is. I gave you a nice round number there. It's $100,000 divided by $1.2 million, right? You started to say it, Andres.
8%.
8.5, yeah. So that's how you pay more for a property. Obviously, your capitalization is going to be lower for the same return, right? Same thing if the price. What if I can steal that $1 million property for $800,000? Then what's my cap rate? Still getting that $100,000 return, because I know what the return is, right? It's rented. I've got $100,000 coming in every year. So if I can steal it for 800 instead of $1 million, what's my cap rate now?
Well,
12.5.
12.5, right? Somebody said that?
Yeah, I said it.
That's right. Okay, so it went way up, right? So that's how cap rates and net operating income fluctuate based on what you're paying, the market value, and what your return is. All right. So net operating income, all revenue from the property minus all. So guys, just to put this into, I know I'm using bigger numbers there than typically what your average investor who runs into you at a dinner party is going to be talking about, but it's the same kind of concept on $100,000 and $10,000, right? So they have that $200,000, and we're going to talk about what to do with that later, depending on what their goals are. But this stuff, everybody wants to know. That's what they want to know without saying it. They want to know what their cap rate can be, what you can find them that's going to bring them in the most money and be the most secure for them. Okay. So all revenue from the property minus all reasonable necessary operating expenses, net operating income. Okay. Does not include debt service. Debt service is principal and interest paid toward a mortgage or note. Okay. So if they have to borrow money to buy something, and you'll have that too. You'll have somebody who says, hey, I've got $60,000 and I want to buy something. And what can I buy with this? What can I leverage? How much do I have to put down? They're going to ask you that kind of thing, right? So let's keep going. Debt service, principal and interest paid. Leverage. You guys know what leverage is, right?
Borrowing
money. The use of borrowed money for investment purposes with the expectation that returns will increase. Now, will that make your returns increase, the bottom line returns increase, or your cash on cash return increase?
Cash on cash.
Cash on cash, right? Because I can take that. Let's say I have that $200,000. We'll go ahead and talk about it now. That $200,000, and I can put 25% down now on 4 houses. Instead of buying one house for $200,000 cash, I can put 50 down on 4 different $200,000 houses if that's what I want to buy, right? So, or I could pay cash for 3 $70,000 condos, right? You guys get where I'm going with that? So there's different ways they can use that, different ways they can leverage that money, and different ways. Do you think I'll get more return out of one $200,000 house or 3 $70,000 condos?
370,000.
Right, because there's a value just to having a roof over your head. There's a minimum rent that people have to pay just to have a roof over their head, right? So if I go buy some 1-1s now, that's all you get for it. 5 years ago, you could have bought 2 2s for that, but now you can buy 1-1s for that 70,000. People are still going to pay what, $900 a month to rent that, $1,000 a month to rent that, right? So now I'm talking about 3,000. There's going to be HOAs and stuff involved as well. But let's say I net 700 out of all of them. That's 2,100 instead of 1,500. Okay. You guys understand that? So I'm doing that. Now, also, when I have one unit, look at my vacancy risk. If I have one unit that goes empty for 2 months, then I've got nothing coming in. If I've got 3 units and one of them goes empty for 2 months, I've still got enough. I've got now 1,400 instead of 0 coming in, right? So it gives us a little more diversification for rent loss and stuff like that. So I like that strategy better. Other people may like other things better. Also, those are typically going to, everything is in percentages, but those are typically going to appreciate a little bit better. I can give you great examples of, like I just said, 5 years ago, 2 2s were 75,000. Now 1 1s are 75,000, right? So they've been going up like crazy. Whereas our housing market has been going up incrementally. Leverage creates some risk, but it also alleviates some risk and allows one to diversify. It's kind of like what I was just talking about. So if we take that 200,000 and we buy 4 of these $200,000 houses, leveraging 75%, right? We're borrowing 75% of the money. Now, like I just explained with the condos, now if one of them sits empty, it doesn't kill us, right? So we have the other ones. So, and we're going to talk about those examples here in a second, as far as leveraging and what effect it has on everything. A rate of return, often used in real estate transactions, cash on cash return. Guys, this is what the layperson cares about. I have this much. What can I do with it? Calculation determines the cash income on the cash invested. When would we not use this as an overall rate of return? Anybody know? It's when we're leveraging. Does the use of leverage affect our cash on cash return? Of course it does. Does it affect our cap rate?
Yes.
No, cap rate's still the same. Cap rate's still the same. You still paid $1 million for it. It still brings in 100,000. It doesn't affect your cap rate, but just affects your cash on cash return. That's the difference. Okay, let's talk about real life application here, about Aunt Sally. Aunt Sally made it to Thanksgiving dinner this year. You told her you're selling real estate and becoming quite the expert, right? Sally said that she's been looking at a couple of investment properties on the internet and that she learned quite a bit too. She had a property right here on her phone and she would love your opinion. Uh-oh, you need to know what you're talking about, right? Sally's putting you on the spot, probably in front of the whole family. Aunt Sally's big find. Advertisement states the following. It's a fourplex, a quad in the downtown area. Asking price is $359. Ad says seller is motivated. The gross rental income, 900 times 4 units times 12 months of $43,200 per year. Taxes, insurance are $3,600 annually. That's it. What do you tell Aunt Sally? No, the answer is there. Hopefully nothing, but we've learned a little bit about Aunt Sally, but we don't know enough about this property yet, okay? What about Sally? We learned that Sally's in need of guidance. We have learned that we need to do some homework if we're going to help Aunt Sally. What's our homework? What else do we need to know?
Find out where the property's at, what the average rents are.
Okay. Is it renting under market or is it at the top of the market rent-wise, right?
Yeah.
Can that part be improved? What else?
What the terms of the lease are, how long those tenants will be there.
Right. Okay. Get the rent rolls and all that kind of stuff. Yep. What else?
Condition of the property.
That's right. What else? It's adding up a lot. There's quite a bit of work that has to go into this, right? What else do we need to know? Who else is important in this besides the property? Aunt Sally's important, right? We need to know about Aunt Sally. How much cash does Sally have? What's Sally's long-term goals? What are Sally's other investments? What would be her exit strategy? How does she feel about leveraging? Can Sally borrow? Lots to know about Sally. There's lots more to know about the property. Okay. Vacancy and delinquency risk must be calculated to anticipate real cash flow. These units are all identical and rent for $900 per month. Is market rent trending up or down, like Richard said? Expenses, gets historical data to determine repairs and anticipate future repairs. Tenant, how old is this roof? How old is everything else? Like you said, Andres, the condition of the property. Tenant turnover creates turn expenses. How long have tenants been there? Would UCF, the Disney area, and downtown have similar turnover? What do you guys think? UCF area, downtown Orlando, Disney area, would they all have similar turnover?
They're all very desirable areas for different reasons.
Right, but with similar turnover, I'm talking about tenant turnover. Who would have the highest tenant turnover in those out of those three?
The
University.
students,
The students, right? Who would have the lowest turnover, would you think?
downtown, maybe, I don't know, because Disney usually has vacation rental.
Well, no, I'm not talking about vacation. I'm talking about regular rentals. Disney area and downtown would have probably pretty similar. A lot of Disney people are there for many years, and a lot of people live downtown for many years, so pretty similar. But UCF area would have constant turnover, right? Constant, a lot of partying, a lot of cleaning up, a lot of stuff. Probably property wouldn't be treated as well, right? We've seen the where they do keg stands and they have footprints on the ceiling. You know, there's all kinds of stuff that you see in these places. So they're very different. So how to calculate net operating income? Well, let's talk about Sally again. How much cash does Sally have? Why is that important?
Be able to afford it, down payment.
Right.
Cash.
We don't want a complete waste of time, right? And this is our Aunt Sally, so we'll believe her. We probably have some idea if she has any money or not anyway, because she's our aunt. But let's say it's anybody else, we want to know, right? What is her long-term goal with investing? What are her other investments? You know, you find out what's her exit strategy. Is she counting on this place holding it forever, or is she counting on it getting the rents up, fixing the place up, getting the rents up, and flipping it? What is she looking to do? And of course, can she borrow? If Aunt Sally is 80 years old, do you think she could borrow? Do you think it's a good idea for her to borrow?
Probably not. She got fixed income.
Right. And do you think that she should be taking a risk at that point in her life?
Probably not.
It's not your choice, but do you think she should be? You know, probably not. Usually the younger you are, the riskier you can be, et cetera. So rent income minus vacancy losses minus expenses is your NOI. We talked about that before. That's reasonable. Reasonable expenses are your income minus your revenue minus your reasonable expenses is your net operating income. So that is what should be advertised. Okay. Net operating income. They'll say, if you look on MLS and stuff like that, they're going to say what the gross income is and what the net income is. But typically when you're talking about these things with an investor, you tell them what the net is. Okay. Purchase price of the fourplex is, let's say, remember it was I think it was 369, but the owner was super motivated. So let's just do a practice problem with that. Purchase price, let's say we get it for 325. These are all variables, right? We talked about the numbers. Well, like I said about the $1 million building, if you buy it for $1.2 million or if you buy it for 800, that changes all the variables, right? So let's throw some variables in there for Aunt Sally. Let's say she can get it for 325. In this case, she's going to borrow money. She's going to put 20% down, 65,000, financing 260. The 30-year loan is at 6.5% with principal interest payment of $1,643 per month. Taxes and insurance at purchase are $3,600 for the year for a total payment of $1,943 per month. Everybody understand that? It's just like a residential mortgage, right?
Right.
Right. Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, BITI. Everybody knows that. All right. Perform the calculations. So the gross income, like we figured out before, was 43.2 a year. That doesn't change with the leveraging, right? Doesn't matter to the tenants. They still pay the same amount. Payments are 1943. So they're a total of 23,316 per year. Previous owners' repair expenses average 1,700 per year. Vacancy and credit loss is estimated at 6% of rent or 2592 per year. That's a pretty standard number, 5 to 10% of vacancy and credit loss. Owner spends about 400 each year in miscellaneous and advertising costs and manages the property on their own. Okay, so we'll get into a little bit later, active versus passive investment in real estate and managing it on your own or hiring a manager, et cetera, and what the difference is. But let's say for this particular building, that's what Aunt Sally is going to do. She's going to manage it on her own, which we needed to know also about Aunt Sally, right, before we figure out the numbers. So here it is.
What's credit loss? Sorry.
Credit loss is the same as vacancy. It's people who owe you money but don't pay. So either a place is vacant or we have renters there who aren't paying,
Okay.
right? So, you know, it ends up the same, but in credit loss, that means people are actually in the unit and not paying. So we got to evict them. So we've got a couple of months of credit loss there, right? All right. So 43.2 rent income, 2592 vacancy losses, 2100 expenses and marketing. That was the 1700 plus the 400. equals 35,808, your net operating income. Your debt service and insurance and tax, you take that out, right? And that's your annual cash flow. So this is the money you spent. This is the money you spent. This is the money you lost. This is what your projected annual cash flow would be. So 15,192. How's that cash on cash return look? We put 65,000 down. What is my cash on cash return if I get back 15,192? I turned $65,000 of cash into 15,192 per year. Is that pretty good, first of all? Well, somebody's doing the calculation. Somebody else tell me if that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Right?
Yeah.
Great cash on cash return. Who did the who's doing the math on this?
Mhm.
My new business partner, that's why I brought him on board.
He's doing the math on it right now?
He's my math guy, okay?
Okay. Well, it's 23%.
23.
This is a yield of 23% on your cash invested. That sounds great, right? 23% a good return, cash on cash? What is it? Is it really great? The answer is yes, it's pretty good.
Yes.
It is really good, okay? But what if I paid cash? Are there any, let's say, so that's 23%. What is bad about that? Is there anything bad about that? What's bad about that for Aunt Sally? What does she have? Yeah, go ahead, Viv.
She has a mortgage.
Yeah, she's got risk, right? She's got debt and she's got a risk, but she did turn 65,000 into 15,000 a year, which is pretty good. So is there any change? What if I paid cash? So let's say Aunt Sally doesn't want to risk it. Okay. What if I paid cash? Is there any change to taxes or insurance?
No.
Is there any change to vacancies or repairs?
No.
Is there any change to debt service?
Yes.
Yes, I don't have any, right?
Right.
How does it affect my return? Anybody guess? Any guesses on that?
It doesn't.
It affects, right. It doesn't affect my return. It affects my cash on cash return, right?
Right.
So how does it affects my actual return, my realized return using cash, 43.2, same vacancy losses, same insurance and tax, same expenses, but now my cash flow without that $23,000 of debt service is 34,908. What's my return on that? Someone please do the math on that. 325,000 brought me of cash. Now, so now I had 325,000 cash and I'm getting back 35,000 a year.
53.7%.
How many?
53.7.
No, it won't be 53. No, my return 35,000 divided by 325.
Oh, I'm sorry. $10.7.
Oh, I took the price. Yeah, 10.74, right? So
Yep.
10.74 is my cash on cash return. Okay. So now that's still a really good return for a cash purchase. A 10.75 cap is really good. But now we did all cash. We took Sally's 325 and turned it into 35 grand a year. Is that pretty good?
Yes.
Well, Sally wants to know. Yes, it is, Vivian. 10.75 is pretty good return on a solid building that she has no debt on now, no risk other than vacancy and loss risk. So that's really good. Both of these are really good if she can buy it for 3. So now, what your goal is going to be here. The reason for all this, and remember these variables. Some of these variables never change. These variables that we talked about, we can't necessarily change the rent income without work, right? I mean, the rent income is what it is. We can fix them up and do that, but now we're investing more. We can't change vacancy loss. So we can't change insurance and tax. We can't change the expenses, right? They're going to change on their own. We can't control that. But the one thing we can control is the 325 that we paid for it. They wanted 369. Owner was motivated. So what we do is we keep replacing this 325 with 350 and 360 and 300 and see what a good purchase price for Sally would be, because that's where we come in, right? We can't control these other things. I don't care how good of a real estate agent you are. You can't control all of these other things. But what you can do is advise Sally how much she can pay for this and get a good return. Okay? And give her a couple of scenarios. If you want to borrow money and do this, this is what you'll get back. And she'll say, well, you know, I'd love to do, I can live on $35,000 a year. I'd love to just do this, right? If I can buy it but I only have $300,000 to invest and I want to keep the rest of my money. So then we try to buy it for 300. If we can't, we can't. But we see how high she can go and give her how high she wants to go, and give her the scenarios for each one. So when we're doing this return, someone do this and say, what if Sally paid 350 for this? Someone do the math on that again. Well, I can tell you it's going to be exactly 10%, because if she paid 349, she's getting in 349, 34,908. So if she paid 349 for this,
9.97.
right, it's going to be 9.9%, right? Still a good return. So, but that's what she needs to know. It's either going to be 10.75% if we can just buy it for 25,000 cheaper, or it's going to be 9.9% if we do that. And you can do the same. Yes.
Would she be better off taking that $325,000 cash and diversifying and buying a couple different properties?
That's a good question. So that's for you to figure out, right? You have to, but you can't just say you need to do that. You need to help her find some properties and say, let's do, if we did it this way, if we took that 325 and we bought what, 3 or 4 condos or 3, you know, a couple of small houses, something like that, this is how much we'd make. Okay. So there are different, absolutely. That's something that you look at. And that's a great question, but that's something for you and Aunt Sally to figure out. And she might say, you know what, I just want one of these. Maybe Sally wants to live in this building and operate the other 3 units. You never know what people might want to do. So absolutely.
More properties means more management.
More management, more spread out, more everything else. So there might be an economy of scale here that makes sense to Sally, or you might be right. You know, she kind of is diversified in this case because she's got 4 units doing 900 each. And that's what I was getting you before. What I like about the cheaper properties is that they have a value. There's a value in a roof. You could put 600 square feet under a roof and it's worth $1,000 a month. But you can't say, I turned that. So I buy 4 units that are 600 square feet each, but a 2,400 square foot house isn't going to rent for $3,600 a month unless it's on a lake or, you know, something fancy about it. Right. So that's where she kind of is diversified in this case, Richard. All right. Leverage versus cash. We seem to get a much higher return when we leveraged. Did we really get a higher return? Yes, we did. But what is the mindset of your investor? Why do so many investors pay cash? Do not assume your clients have the same mindset or values that you do. And this goes for absolutely all sales of all types, your residential, commercial, anything. Never assume that someone has the same values, the same mindset that you have, okay? I swear to you guys, I could sell yachts for a living. I can't afford a yacht. I wouldn't buy a yacht if I could, but I could sell yachts. You know what I mean? And you guys could sell things that you guys could all sell fancy cars, fancy stuff that you would never buy on your own. Some of you could, some of you couldn't, but you would never do it on your own anyway. But you could sell those things. You can't assume that your clients have the same mindset or values that you do. And we fall into this trap a lot in any kind of sales. So
don't think with your wallet.
Don't think with your wallet, think with their wallet, right? There's only one way to do that is ask them questions. Active versus passive investments. For example, some of you guys, and I hear you guys say this, and it drives me crazy. Some of you guys hate condos because you hate HOAs, right? They eat up the thing, and then you rent it for $1,000, but you only get $750 and blah, 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 right? Think about what HOAs do. HOAs means, and that's a common mindset of someone who's never had to replace a roof on a property. HOAs pay for the roof. HOAs pay for painting the house. If you ever had to paint your house, you know this. They pay for the painting of the house. They pay for the yard. They pay for the pool. They pay for the gate. They pay for all of this stuff that you're never going to, but mainly the roof and the painting and the yard and all that stuff that people don't do. A lot of them pay for your cable and your water and all that kind of stuff too. A lot of that stuff is value that you pass on to the tenant as well, like the cable and the water bill that they don't have to pay. So you get a little higher rent for that, right? Because the tenant looks at it as, well, gosh, I can get this place for 900 or I can get this place for 950, and it includes the cable and the water, which is a better deal, right? So don't just dismiss HOAs because of that. They get a lot of things cheaper than we would. They get a lot of things on an economy of scale. So think about that as well. HOAs do not kill investments. They actually make it, it's a lot like doing a triple net for a commercial deal, which we'll talk about later. They make it where you don't have as many variables and you don't have to do reserves for a new roof and stuff like that on your personal investment. They do, but you just put money in and they take care of it. Okay?
Keep the property value.
Pardon me, Richard?
I said, I think their biggest thing is they help keep the property value higher.
Yeah, you're talking about like a residential subdivision like I live in with our HOA. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm more talking about like condo HOAs where they're bigger amounts. That's $250, $300 a month, something like that. Yeah, they hurt, but they also take care of all this stuff. So think about that when you're doing this. And do not assume your clients have the same mindset or values that you do. So be able to sell people on an HOA as well as not sell them on an HOA if you know it's bad for them, okay? Active versus passive investment. We talked about this before because this is an expense. If you're doing passive investment, there's an expense in managing. And I don't care if you're doing the stock market or you're doing whatever you're doing, you're paying a manager, somebody to manage your investment for you, right? If not, you say, well, Ryan, I do E-Trade. Well, guess what? You're managing that. So you're either managing it or you're having somebody else manage it, okay? So an active investor manages the properties herself. A passive investor hires a management company. What is involved in managing a property?
Money.
Sure. Money. What else?
Time.
Lots of time, right? Do you guys think it's worth it to manage 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 properties? You guys ever done that?
Well, unless you want to be up in the middle of the night and taking all the emergency phone calls.
There's an economy of scale. You're exactly right. There's an economy of scale of managing properties. This is just my opinion. This is not science or a fact. There's an economy of scale of managing properties that makes it worth it or not worth it. And that's, again, I won't pass my values and judgment on to you guys. That's up to you. But when you're doing this, there's a lot involved in property management, okay? Tenant screening and placement, property maintenance, rent collection and remittance, inspections, repairs, cleaning, lease renewals, evictions, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't even put everything on here. So you guys think about you're managing this unit for $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month, and you're making $100 a month doing this, minus splitting with your broker and doing with all this other stuff. Is it really worth it? That's from your standpoint. From the property owner standpoint, Aunt Sally needs to know all of this stuff goes into managing properties if she hasn't managed properties. So when you talk to Aunt Sally about managing the property, make sure she knows what's involved in it. If she says, oh, I can make another, because 8 or 10% of the rent is going to have what effect on her bottom line? Does anybody know? What's it going to turn that 10 cap into? That 10% cash on cash return, 10.74. What's it going to turn that into if she has to pay 10% to a property management company?
It's going to drop.
It's going to drop a little bit, right? Which we would figure out for her. But it's going to take that 43,000. Let's look at it real quick. Let's go back up here. Here we go. What was our number? 43.2. Somebody, 43.2 minus 4,320. Actually, do 15,192 minus 4,000. 11,192, let's say. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now divide that by 65,000. 11,192 divided by 65,000.
17.2.
17.2. So our 23 went down to 17. Now take our 34,908 and do 30,908, or just 31,000 if you want. 31,000 divided by 325.
$9.53.
So we went from 10.74 to 9.53. Okay. So it affects your return, but now it's a passive investment for her. Now she just got to look over, answer a few phone calls. Now she got to answer 1 or 2 phone calls a month and look over a monthly statement from the property management company. Okay. So it went from an active investment to a passive investment. So that's the difference. And we need to let Aunt Sally know, do you want to do this stuff? Or would you do all this for $4,000 a year? It's up to Aunt Sally, right? It's not up to me or you. Maybe Aunt Sally's got nothing else going on, right? And she'd love to do this. It keeps her busy. Who knows? Okay. Let's talk about commercial investment. You guys have any questions first on residential stuff? Is anybody bewildered by that or irritated or have any questions? Anything about that?
Oh, I do. How much do property management charge for their work? What is the percentage from the rent that they take?
Typically, typical property management is 10% plus they charge a month's rent for placement of a tenant. Florida Realty Investments does 8%. And if somebody has a lot of properties, they go a little lower than that. But that's industry standards, about 10%.
Okay, and they do the screening to find tenants for the property.
They do. So they'll screen your tenants. They charge them $75 per adult. And then they screen them and with their application. Yes.
They handle all the security deposits. They put that in a trust account in a bank.
A non-interest bearing account, and then they keep it separate. Well, they put all the deposits into one account, but they keep them completely separate from everything else. Yes.
And they're held accountable by who?
I'm sorry?
Which department would hold them accountable? Or is there any, like Florida Real Estate
Commission? Yeah, FREC.
Commission?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Are they typically real estate brokers?
Yes. Yes, typically real estate. It has to be a broker or it can be the property owner themselves. But if the property owner themselves, if Aunt Sally is managing this herself, she needs to keep all security deposits in a non-interest bearing separate account. She cannot commingle them with her funds. Okay. Mm-hmm. Aunt Sally needs to know that too. Because she better have it for them when they move out if they didn't wreck anything. All right. And then when they move out, you have to do you have to go through it and have a disbursement and all that kind of stuff. And anything that you want to keep because they broke something, then you have to account for that. Any other questions on any of the residential stuff? So anything else you guys want to talk about there?
Ryan,
all right. Yes.
Sorry, one more.
No
so when you have the home value and you want to calculate how much to charge them per month for rent, is it between 0.8 to 1% of the home value? Or how do you determine the rent?
Oh, absolutely not. No. I would do, it's just like you're selling a house, do a CMA. Go around and find out what's renting around it and for how much. You can look on MLS and it's just absolutely market rent. There's no correlation to the value of the house whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it might work out similar to that, but that's not how you determine it at all. Just market rent, whatever you can get for it.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on that?
Are listing agents seeing multiple offer scenarios
On what?
on residential?
On residential investments?
No, residential sales.
Are listing agents seeing multiple offer scenarios right now in the market?
Yes.
You mean not related to this training we're doing today? You mean in general?
Just in general.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Commercial, let's do commercial. Commercial investment basic. Okay. A lot of the basics are the same, but you're going to hear a lot of words. How many of you guys have tried to do any commercial stuff? Raise your hand. Edul, I know you have. Any commercial rentals, anything like that? Are you guys interested in that?
Yeah.
You want to learn about it? Okay. I hate this, by the way. This is my worst training to do not in person. because I hate when there's math involved, and I can tell you guys aren't doing your math because you're just looking at the screen. And those of you who aren't on the screen, I know you're not doing the math. So I just say, but people's eyes glass over when we start doing the numbers and all this stuff, and I hate to go too fast. So guys, please pipe up and ask questions if you can, or if you have any. Thank you. Cap rates are king. So we talked about cap rates. Cap rates are all you're going to hear about in commercial investment. Why? They only care about one thing, right? You'll get residential investors and they'll tell you, Ryan, I don't want to own a $70,000 condo. I don't want to be a slumlord, right? I don't want to have to deal with tenants who can't pay or never pay and always give me excuses. And, I can't be tough enough to tell somebody it's December and they have kids and they can't pay their rent and there's not going to be a Christmas this year. I don't want to go through that. All understandable, right? Can't put our values and morals on other people and our judgment on other people, right? That they run it how they want to. But commercial, I love commercial because there's none of that. You guys have taken people into houses and the house was perfect for them, but they just couldn't stand those pink drapes and they do not want to buy that house. That does not happen in commercial. How much is the rent? How much is the price and how much is the rent? That's what they want to know. So they use something called triple net. Okay, triple net is only there. Let me tell you the first part. It's only there so they can quickly assess the value of a property and the cap rate without the variables. So they have what's called pass-throughs. Okay, variables, if you have a lease, I know exactly how much rent I'm getting every month. What I don't know, if I'm going to own this property for 20 years, is what's going to happen to my taxes and insurance, right? And my common area maintenance. Who's going to take care of that? Is that going to go up or down? What do you guys think? Taxes or insurance typically go up or down? Up, right? Particularly if you own something in Brevard County, or if you own something in Sarasota that gets hit by hurricanes and stuff like that, right? That's what happens to us. Or if you own something downtown and there's riots or something next door and they're spending $500 million fixing stuff, your insurance is going to go up. So what those pass-throughs do is they pass it through to the tenant. So you guys have if you've looked at a commercial property, they'll say, oh yeah, it's $25 a foot with a $6 CAM. And if you're a residential agent, you're going to say, what the heck is a $6 CAM? And what do you mean it's $25 a foot, right? So $25, when they tell you how much it is a foot, that is the price per square foot per year. So if it's a 1,000 square foot building, I'm doing it for the math, 1,000 square foot building, and it's $25 a foot, it's going to be $25,000 a year for base rent, what they call base rent, okay? CAM is typically it's going to be triple net, and they'll tell you it's triple net with the CAM is this much. Triple net means taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance, okay? Those things are called pass-throughs. They vary, so they pass them through to the tenant, and the property owner will let you know every year that your CAM went up from $6 to $6.22 this year, or whatever it is, okay? Which means your real rent is $25 plus $6, okay, or $6.22, whatever they change it to. So it's $31 is your real rent. So that 1,000 square foot building is really going to cost you $31,000 this year. You don't pay by the year, you pay by the month with sales tax, but it's $31,000. Okay, divide that by 12 and you've got your monthly rent payment, add sales tax. Okay.
How much is sales tax?
What's the sales tax? It's
Yeah,
whatever the county says it is. It's 6.5%, 6%, 7%, whatever county you live in or the property's in.
Okay, because I'm coming from a state where there's no sales tax on property like that.
Welcome to Florida. There is here. Everything else is cheap, but there is sales tax. So there you go. So that's how that is done. Any questions on that? So that's triple net. There's double net, there's single net, there's modified gross, and there's full service. Modified gross is what your house is probably, right? You rent it, you got the base thing, and then they pay your taxes and insurance. You pay for the maintenance of the house or whatever, or you might live in a full service place like a condo, right? But this isn't for residential. I'm just giving you, there's full service. We have an office in Claremont, full service, okay? We don't pay for anything there. We pay one price for the place. They pay everything else, Okay, there's not individually metered. There's no, we could burn all the energy there we want and our bill's gonna be the same. Okay, so there's different ones. Any questions on triple net? Oh, let's talk about why triple net though. Triple net is done so a property can easily be assessed for value. So that $25 base rent over this, let's say the whole building's 100,000 square feet, and they get, the nail salon is gonna pay $30 a foot, and the hair cuttery is gonna pay $28 a foot. Publix is gonna pay $4 a foot. Everybody else is gonna pay more, right, to be next to the Publix. They got Publix in there cheap. That's typically how that works, because Publix, we're gonna come bless your center with our Publix, and you're gonna be able to rent all these nail salons and everybody else at top dollar, right? So Tijuana Flats pays $36 a foot, et cetera, on down the line, right? So that's how it works, but they bundle all this up and they come up with an average foot, and they can do it like that. And they can sell it again next year based on that, and they don't have to worry about all of the fluctuating numbers, which we call the pass-throughs, right? The variables, the taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance, okay? That's why they do triple F. Makes it very easy. Oh, here now I'm explaining everything that I just explained. To confuse you further, a lot of people will call all three of these together CAM, as in we're asking $25 a foot plus CAM. Okay, even though common area maintenance is only a small part of it, I'll say the same. It's similar to how Congress is considered the whole thing, but the congressmen and congresswomen are just in the House of Representatives. Okay, but they call the whole thing Congress. It's kind of like that. Makes up a part of it, but they'll call the whole thing that, just to avoid, just to add confusion, but it's supposed to make it easier. Okay, so it's really pass-throughs. When somebody says, yeah, we got a $6 CAM there, that means it's really pass-throughs. Okay, all three of them together. Terms. Typically multiple year terms. Okay, so commercial leases, they're going to be typically 3, 5, or 10-year terms. It's a tenant's option to renew, usually up to 3 terms. So what it does is, and it's at the tenant's option. So the landlord can't wait for you to grow a big business there in 3 years and then kick you out, right? Or raise your rent beyond what's already agreed to. So when you do this, they have what's called an escalator. So if I'm renting this place for $25 a foot, it typically is going to escalate 3% per year just to keep up with inflation. It's usually 3%, 4%, something like that. Okay, so it's $25 this year. Next year, it's going to be 25, more than that. Okay, whatever that is. So it's going to go up a little bit next year by 3%. Okay, 25.75 per foot. Okay, everybody got that? So it goes up. So they know what it's going to be every year. And that's where you're taking the variables out of it helps. So usually up to 3 terms though. So let's say Vernesia goes and starts a new restaurant, and her restaurant is the best in town, and she's there for 3 years. The owners can't kick her out and turn Vernesia's restaurant into Bernesia's, just change the name and try to steal all her clientele, right? She has the option to stay there three more terms, okay? 2 more terms for a total of 3, right? That's typical, just so you guys know. The tenant is going to guarantee the lease, and the owner, landlord, will use enticements. TI is tenant improvement. So Bernesia is going to open her restaurant, but right now it's a nail salon that just got vacated. And the landlord, instead of Vernesia having to pay all of this money to get the kitchen put in and everything else, the landlord is going to give her an allowance, a tenant improvement allowance of $10 a square foot or $20 a square foot, so she can go in and put booths in and stuff like that, put the kitchen walls in and stuff like that. Okay, so TI, if you're changing the purpose of a unit, you're going to want to use the tenant improvement to do that. If you don't need any tenant improvement, let's say it was a restaurant and she's taking over, now she can bargain for free rent as an enticement to get her to come in. She's going to say, I'd like to do 6 months free rent. My business model says I'm not going to make any money for 6 months anyway, but if I could do free rent for 6 months, that would be great. The little bit of tenant improvement I need, I'll do. Let's say, you know, my brother-in-law is a handyman. He's going to come in and do my tenant improvement for me, and I'd rather get 6 months of free rent. Okay. Signage, etc. So stuff like signage is a bargaining chip that you can use. I want top billing signage. I want, you know, better signage on the outside, whatever it is that you want. They'll try to entice you with signage. Some tenants in the downtown building pay more to have their name at the top of the building. You see a SunTrust building when in reality, 20 floors of it are not SunTrust, just the top 5 are SunTrust. but they have SunTrust on top of the building, right? That's the title tenant, they call it. That's the one who pays extra to have their name on the building.
Mm.
Anybody have any questions on any of that stuff? Nobody. Awesome. Commercial leasing, getting paid. If you don't know what you're doing, you will get paid very little. Here's how it works. You should get paid. I've had some of you guys just take, not you guys necessarily in this room, but take 1 month's rent like you would for a residential lease. That's not how it's done. It is typically going to be 3%, 4%, 2%, similar to what you do in residential for the life of the first term. So if Vernesia gets a 5-year for her restaurant, she's doing a 5-year lease with 2 additional terms at her option. You're only going to get paid on the first 5, okay? And what you get paid on is the gross base rent. So if Vernesia is paying $5,000 a month in base rent times 60 months, right? That's $300,000 she's going to pay in the first 5 years in rent, base rent. You get paid 3% of that. So you're going to make $9,000. It's just like selling a $300,000 house. All right. The difference is you're going to get paid half of it typically at lease signing and half of it at rent commencement when they start actually paying the rent, which means if Vernesia got 6 months of free rent, I don't get the second half of my payment until she starts paying rent. Okay. But I got half of it up front when she signed the lease and half of it when she starts. Typically people get a couple months free rent or 1 month or 3 months or whatever. If they take the tenant improvement, they don't get any, but she's already signed the lease and I've got to wait for the improvement to be done. So these payments are typically going to be months apart, right? But I'm going to get $4,500 now and I'm going to get $4,500 when Vernesia starts paying rent. Okay. That's how it works. Any questions on that? Awesome. You guys are either shy about questions or you just absorb everything. Typically paid half. Okay, so why don't you get paid on the next 2? You're not going to get paid 5 years later if Vernesia goes forward, and then again 5 years later if she keeps going forward with this lease, because they can't count on that, and you're done. You just get paid for the first term. You should probably get a mentor in your first deal or 2. We have people who will mentor you in commercial deals. You should probably get a mentor when you're first doing this so you understand. I like to tell this story about my friend Mark. He's actually my brother's friend and went to high school with my brother, and they were 5 years older than me, and they used to beat me up when I was little. But Mark is he worked for a company called Florida Shopping Center Group. Now he has his own company. But I called Mark. We had a property we were managing in Eustis. You guys know where Eustis is? Anybody know where Eustis is? Okay. Eustis is in Lake County. It's about the 5th biggest town in Lake County, if that helps you. And it's near Mount Dora. Okay. So we had a property we were managing there, an old public center. And we had a fitness, Planet Fitness coming in there to rent. And the property manager came to my office and asked me if I knew anything. They were trying to pull something at the last minute. They were trying to get something from 10% to 8% at the last minute. They're about to sign the lease and they're trying to get this done. And so she asked me if I knew anything about that. And I said, I don't really. I don't know why they think they can do that. I don't know what they're trying to do. So let's call my friend Mark. So I called my friend Mark and got Mark on the phone right there on speakerphone. And I'm asking Mark about this because he represents these shopping centers, right, for a living. And I'm asking Mark about this. I said, Planet Fitness is trying to do this at the last minute. They're trying to go from 10% to 8%, blah, blah, blah. Mark says, oh, I wouldn't let them do that there. You know, they tried to do the same thing in Mount Dora, which is about 5 miles away or whatever from Eustis. They're trying to do the same thing in Mount Dora. They tried that 2 years ago to do the same thing in Mount Dora. He goes on this long spiel about why they shouldn't be able to do it and they think they can, but blah, 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 right? And that's not what 24-hour fitness is doing and all this other stuff. And I said, do you normally represent them or something? He goes, no, but I do represent 24-hour fitness, and that's their competitor. And so I keep tabs on what's going on. So Mark knew what's going on in a secondary market of a secondary market with a competitor. He knew everything about this. Okay. He went on for 10 minutes about what they're trying to do and all this stuff. Mark is an expert. Okay. If I were going with the knowledge that I have about commercial leasing against Mark, who's an expert in what he does, that's all he does. That's his niche. he could take advantage of a guy like me, and certainly people like you guys. I have a lot of background in commercial, just so you guys know, 15 years in commercial real estate. But Mark could get the best of me in a deal, you know, maybe a percentage point here or there, right? And certainly people who know what they're doing can take advantage of people who don't know what they're doing in a transaction. So do the best you can, get some mentorship and get some help on these things. Because when you're doing commercial real estate, and I do a commercial training as well, and we'll talk about that then, there are so many different niches to this, where you don't just dip your toes into a niche that's not yours and expect to do a good job for somebody. So, because you're swimming with sharks when you do that. Okay. So the fact that Mark knew what a competitor was doing in a submarket of a submarket, I mean, it's just incredible. His depth of knowledge on this one little tiny subject that we had, that he knew all about it. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this. If you don't know what you're doing, refer it to someone or get a mentor. And when you do refer it, and I tell you guys this during the commercial training, refer it to someone by taking them as a mentor. Get involved in the deal all the way through. So you know what, Mr. Daryl, I'm going to refer this deal to you, but I want to go to every meeting and I want to be involved in every email and I want to do all the legwork for you. If you have to go pick up a paper somewhere and you need somebody to go do it, I'll go do it. But I just need your expertise on this and we'll split the deal, right? Most commercial people will be like, that sounds great. I'll use my expertise and you know, take half a deal and you go do all the running around. That's great. Okay. Because there is a lot of running around also for commercial deals and stuff, getting the rent rolls, doing all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of background work that goes on when you're doing investment properties and commercial deals. It's not just as easy as some people try to make it seem. So make sure you're doing that. Any other questions on this, guys?
I do.
Yes.
So some people have asked about nail shops. And so I've looked on the MLS for some commercial properties, but I don't really find anything on there. So for commercial properties, we have to have another system that we go through.
There's a couple different. There are a couple different websites I would use. A lot of commercial people are not on MLS. Okay, they don't pay the board and they don't pay that stuff. So a lot of them are there. You can find stuff on loopnet.com and Crexi, CREXI, and there's a couple other websites that you can find stuff on. But if you're looking for, typically a commercial realtor is going to use pretty standard stuff like that. Those are public websites. You can get on there and look around. Okay.
What was the second one?
What's it called again, Ryan?
Viv, will you write those down, please, in the chat? Vivian will write you, and she's got another one too that she'll put in there. I think you told me about another one, Vivian. LoopNet, Crexi, which is CREXI.
Okay.
And there's some other ones too, but hopefully somebody put that in chat. I can't really see the chat right now because I'm sharing my screen. There we go. So any other questions on that stuff? That's a good question. Yes, commercial people don't always use MLS. In fact, they rarely would use MLS for that stuff. Do you need another license for renting commercial? You do not. You're a licensed real estate agent in the state of Florida. You have the license. You have the ability to sell commercial, residential, businesses. You're licensed for it. You do need the knowledge or you will get burned. Any other questions? Awesome. What are you guys doing for, you guys don't have any other questions on investment stuff? Don't be shy, please. There are no dumb questions. There are no bad questions. There's no any others. Do you guys understand how to formulate cap rates and how the price affects them and what you should be looking for and the questions to ask? Oh, let's go over, if you guys have another minute, let's go over, I wonder if somebody.
I do have a question, Brian.
Yes, please.
You mentioned earlier that, in your opinion, it's best to invest in a couple of, tiny houses or condos or apartments rather than, a $200,000 or $300,000 home. In your experience with this, what would be like the amount of time that usually, let's say you purchase two condos and you get a good return for the first couple of years, what would be, trying to think of how to ask the question, what would be a good amount of time for an investor to have those condos as rentals and then sell it. You say probably, you know, for them to gain money back from those properties when their value exceeds what they pay for. How long would it take for an investor, let's say just 2 condos, and it's going to be good, you know, for rentals, but how long would it possibly take? And I know that the market changes constantly, but usually in your experience, before that investor decides to sell them, how many years usually takes for them to get a really good return? If they
Well, it depends completely on the market. So I mean, I can't answer that question. It depends completely on the market and how much they've gone on. I can tell you, we were selling condos at Palmas Altus 5 years ago for $42,000, and now they're selling for $110,000. Every unit in Palmas Altus is a 1,006 square feet, 2.2. They were selling for $42,000 in 2015, and now they're selling for $110,000 for the same condo.
Wow.
So, and rents have gone up. Rents were $625 back into 2015, and now they're $1,250 or something, $1,100, something like that. So it's gone that way. But also, people's required rate of returns might have come down a little bit. So now they're not looking necessarily for 10% returns. They're taking 8% returns, or whatever the situation is. And as interest rates come down, I don't want to confuse you guys with this stuff, but as interest rates come down, that means bond yields come down. Money market yields come down, CD yields come down, all these other yields come down, meaning the competing investment is real estate, right? So people will put it in the stock market or the bond market, or they'll put it in real estate. And if all these other ones are down, then people can charge more for their real estate because the desired return of people goes down, the expectations go down. So if the stock market is too volatile and not bringing great returns, if the bond market is too low, then real estate investors can raise their prices, knowing that they can get away with giving a lower yield, if that makes sense, a lower cap rate. So if I'm not making anything, if I'm making 10% in the stock market and 7% in the bond market, then real estate, to compete, is going to have to lower its prices to make the percentage cap rate look better, right? So now I've got to give 10% cap rates in real estate to compete with the stock market. Does that make sense? As other markets are better, that means real estate returns have to be better, which means prices have to come down. Prices can go up right now because we don't have to compete with a great bond market, stock market, right? That's how it's done. With interest rates so low, it makes people's desired or required rate of return lower. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
Ryan, it's now a good time to invest on little properties like that, and a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 2 bedroom, 2 bath for rental purposes?
It is, because rents are good, but I think values are high right now. And I would honestly, personally wait until after the election and after this COVID thing dies down a little bit. I think there's going to be, like we talked about, a lot of foreclosures. And I would hold off right now. If you have an investor who's dying to do it, do it. If you have an investor who wants to sell, let them sell. That now would be a good time to sell, and then wait it out a little bit, I think. That's my personal opinion. If I knew everything, I wouldn't be doing this, right? I'd be sitting at the beach somewhere.
Hey, Ryan, is
Yes.
there a special time as far as capital gains with income properties? Remind me, I can't remember. Do I need to wait really 2 years?
Not really income properties. No, that's only for properties you lived in.
Homestead.
Yeah, it's homestead property. So if you live in a property for 2 years, then you can rent it out, is fine, or sell it. So a lot of people live in these flip properties and stuff for 2 years, and you get a $250,000 per person exemption from capital gains.
So if I decide to sell my income property in 1 year instead of 2 years, I'm paying the same capital gains unless I do a 1031.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right. Good question. Thank you. All these are great questions. Keep them coming. Otherwise, I'm going to bore you guys with this investor questionnaire. So can you guys see that? Is it screen sharing?
Yes.
The investor questionnaire. You guys see it okay?
Yep.
Let me see if I can. There you go. That better?
Yes.
Okay. So you're talking with these people that you meet, and you send them this questionnaire, or you can sit down and fill it out with them. What is your investment goal? Guys, this is about them. Like I said, it's not about us. It's not about our goals and our strategies and our values. It's about theirs. What's your investment goal? Tell me about your real estate portfolio, property, rates of return, exit strategies. What kind of property would you like to acquire and why? You're going to talk to different kinds of people. You're going to talk to people who know what they're talking about, and you're going to talk to people who don't know what they're talking about. If they ask a lot of questions on this about what's the rate of return and what do you mean by exit strategy, you know that you're not dealing with a sophisticated investor and that you're going to have to do a little more teaching, right? So what kind of properties would you like to acquire and why? What is your required rate of return on your next investment, the one you're talking to me about right now? How long do you plan to keep it in your portfolio? Why is this important?
Hey, Ryan.
Yes.
So when would you use, like, in terms of, ROI, return on investment, or ROI and rate of return? Like, which?
So, return. Did you really? Was that not in my thing? I took it out of there, I guess. The difference between, okay, rate of return and ROI. I'm so glad you asked that question, Andres. It's like I planted you in the audience, because it drives me crazy. People think the rate of return is their ROI. People like to say ROI, 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 because they're using a big term they heard somewhere, okay? A rate of return is what we've been talking about all day. An ROI cannot be fully calculated until I dispose of the property, okay? That's my complete return on investment. Then if I want to go back and calculate it over what it was annually, that's fine. So if I have that $1 million building, let's say, and I get $100,000 per year out of it, and then I sell it for $1.5 million. So now my return after 5 years has been $500,000 for the rental return, right? And then another $500,000 in appreciation. So I've made $1 million over 5 years with this. So now I can chop it up by 5 years if I want and say my rate of return was 20% or whatever it was per annum. Okay. So your return on investment is not calculated until you've liquidated the asset and you know what your entire return on investment was, because it includes appreciation. Okay. But your rate of return is what everybody wants to know. They want to know that. And then they also want to know, like what Malvis was asking a second ago about the appreciation. What do you think it's going to appreciate over the next 5 years, Andres? And of course you don't know. You can only tell them what's done over the last 5 years, right? And what people are projecting and stuff. But look, I'm not a psychic. So I'm glad you asked that question. Rate of return is what people really want to know, but they're going to say ROI because they saw it on TV. Okay.
Is it fair to steer back to then cap rates and then rate of return?
That's what they want to know. They want to know cash on cash typically, right? They typically want to know cash on cash. Or if they want to know cap rate, it's because they can figure that out, that if they borrow money, what it's going to be, and if they pay cash, what it's going to be. But the cap rate, if you pay cash, cap rate's a cap rate. Okay, the cap rate is your cash on cash. But if you're going to leverage it, obviously your return, your cash on cash goes up. But now you've got a leveraged property with risk and debt. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Right. When would you like to acquire the property? Again, is there urgency here or is there not? If you're going to invest strictly cash, half of this investor questionnaire, guys, is to steer you away from time wasters and tire kickers. Okay. The other half is so you actually help them. That's the most important half. If you're looking to invest strictly cash, are you going to use leverage? If leveraging, how much are you pre-approved? That's just as important as this. They'll waste your time just as much in this as they will in a regular traditional house, right? And with whom, let's get them on the phone, right? Do you plan to manage the property yourself, or is it a passive investment? We talked about this. Are you purchasing in your own name using an organization or LLC, trust, etc.? Have you spoken with legal or tax professional regarding the benefits, drawbacks of using an organization? And we're getting into somewhat Daryl was just talking about how with exit strategies and stuff like that. That's another reason they should be talking to a tax or legal professional. Okay. So if they say that my exit strategy is to have it just to flip it, or my exit strategy is to hold it 5 years, what are the difference tax-wise? Should they have an LLC for liability or for what, right? So that's what you're doing. Is LLC going to protect you from personally guaranteeing a loan? Probably not. No. Right? It may protect you though if you're doing a flip and you're going to have contractors in there and somebody falls off the roof. Okay, so keep that in mind. Any questions on this? Do you guys understand these questions?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to say something. I had a good friend of mine, another realtor, and on her Facebook page, she actually just wrote out a question. What kind of income property would you like to buy, where and why? And she had so many responses to that. It made everybody think, and I'm sure she got a lot of leads from that just by asking her share that question.
That is a great idea. That is a great idea. I love that. And you know, there's no plagiarism laws on Facebook. If you guys want to do that. So that's a really good idea for you guys. I do like that. It does make people think. And I would love to actually read I'd like to know who that is, because I'd like to read the responses on that. So let's talk about, which you guys asked about before, the difference in, I want to reiterate this, the difference in if somebody says they have a $200,000 cash, they want to buy a $200,000 house versus the three $67,000 condos or four $200,000 houses that they pay 50 down on each, 25% down on each, and buy four of them. What do you guys see as the advantages and disadvantages of those kind of options? Which a lot of people don't know are open to them, by the way. They don't know that. So what do you guys see in those as pluses and minuses?
The cons with single families is you have, for each one, you have a roof, you have appliances, you have a lot of expenses if you go with single family homes. With condos, you only have one roof. You do have the appliances, and your HOA usually covers the roof. However, with condos, you also have assessments that you have to watch. So you have to watch the ages of the condos. I myself prefer duplexes, triplexes, and quads. It makes the most money.
Great answer. Great answer. Anybody else have some thoughts? So what Daryl's talking about is good because of this. He's diversifying. What he likes about duplex, triplex, and quads, he's diversifying. He's taking away his vacancy risk of having no income, right? Because he's got multiple units, and he's got them all under one roof, so to speak, right? So he doesn't have to manage properties all over town and drive around and do all kinds of stuff, but which is great. You guys have thoughts on that? It's similar to the Aunt Sally's thing that we talked about before, Daryl. I don't know if you were in for that part. I couldn't see everybody. But we talked about a quadplex and how her rent, each unit in this quadplex rented for $900 a piece. But if somebody's not in there, then she's still getting $2,700, right? So if, when she has a vacancy, and that is a good return. So, I mean, that's a diversified return. So she's never sitting there with no money coming in, theoretically. And we talked about the advantages of an HOA in that it does cover the roof. Anybody who's ever bought a roof for something knows that's nice to have, and does a lot of times cover other expenses, sometimes for the tenant, where you can charge a little higher rent because they don't have to pay cable and water because it's covered in the HOA. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? Daryl, do you mind naming your friend?
Yeah, and I can't think of her last name, but her first name's Lindsay. She used to work with me at Mainframe, and now she's over at Coldwell Banker. She's a great girl. Actually, she just bought an investment property up in Myrtle Beach that she's proud of. So I can get her last name, but her first name's Lindsay. She's just a crazy girl, but she knows what she's doing. She knows what she's talking about.
What does she put on her Facebook at?
Let me go on my Facebook while I'm here to see if I can find her real quick. Give me a second.
Thanks.
I hate remembering last names.
It's so hard to find a duplex now.
That was one thing I was going to say. Duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes are often overpriced. So it's hard to, because they are premium investment properties, they are almost always overpriced, and I cannot I cannot justify the prices that they ask.
Yeah.
They are almost always overpriced. That's the only bad thing about them, is getting
So
them.
Now I look into what about Airbnbs, doing Airbnbs, but I really want to do flex. Yeah.
Airbnbs are nice, high return. How would you like to own one right now?
Not good.
No, if
Or
you've owned one
vacation.
since March,
Yeah.
a lot of those people
Can
are.
I say her name real quick? It's Lindsay Siebert. I'm sorry, I'm at a broker's open and somebody might come in right now. But her name's Lindsay Siebert, Seibert. She's great. Thanks.
Thanks, Daryl. So yeah, a lot of those are going to be foreclosed. So you'll have an option for them after this, but who's to say when the next pandemic comes along or anything like that? So they're risky as well. But yeah, they're high return, high risk. And a lot of management. You're going to clean them up every 3 days and all that stuff too. So, or paying somebody to do it. But people who have owned them, I've heard very sad stories. In fact, I've seen some of those on Facebook, very sad stories from people who own Airbnbs and can't get anybody to come stay. Any other questions or comments? Victoria, just for the record, I think those are great. I think that's part of the future of real estate investing. I think they're great. I think
the Airbnbs, yeah.
And stuff, and look for that and look for what's next. You know.
How do you look for that though? When what's the criteria?
Well, you have to figure that out on your own, Malvis. You have to say what can I buy for relatively inexpensive that people are going to want to stay. And then you have to check with your local jurisdictions about registering the property and what they'll allow and not allow. And there's a lot of that is in flux right now too, which makes it riskier also. So you buy something you think is going to be a great Airbnb, and then the city of Kissimmee cracks down on them, or wherever you're looking. So keep that in mind as well.
There's a lot of properties being dumped right now because of the pandemic. The last, 3 or 4 months now, nobody can stay at their Airbnb. So tons of properties down in Osceola, Reunion, the different short-term communities, they're being dumped. So you can get some really good prices right now, but you got to be careful, just like Ryan said.
I think I'd wait for this one for the whole, first of all, the pandemic to be over, and for the election to be over and everything else, and see what's going to happen. But also just time, because the reason people are dumping these properties, like Daryl said, the reason they're dumping them is because they can't keep paying the mortgage on. Okay, so they want to get rid of it as soon as they can before the mortgage eats them alive. And a lot of those people are going to end up not being able to sell because, frankly, I think you'd be insane to buy an Airbnb property right now. You're not going to make any money on it for God knows how long, 6 months, 8 months, who knows, until people start traveling and everything's wide open again. So I think I would wait to see the fallout from the foreclosure going to happen. There's a lot of hardworking people who spent their only $20,000 as a down payment on one of these Airbnb places. And it's sad, but they're probably going to lose it. All right. I feel like the Grim Reaper, but I would tell you just to wait and be the buzzard who picks the bones of whatever they had. That's life. Anybody else have any questions?
When do you think is a good time to start considering again after the election's over and there's already a cure for the vaccine? That's when we should start rolling it in? Or, I know it's weird to say and it's hypothetical, but I'm just wondering, like, I don't want to be the last to jump on board while everybody else has started already.
No, I think you'll know it. I think the properties will hit the market, and I think when Disney World and everybody's back up to 100% and everything's going, I think you'll know it. I don't think there's going to be a date, and I'm not holding my breath for a vaccine. Certainly not one that I would take. So, you know,
if you wait until everything's perfect, you're going to miss the boat.
Yeah, but I would wait until you see it, and I think you'll know it when you see it. At some point, the properties will be a good deal, and you'll know it. Let me tell you this: if a property's not a good deal, here's a good barrier for a good marker for you. If it's not a good deal, if you were doing a regular rental on it, then it's not a good deal. Okay, so if it doesn't make sense as a regular rental, because that's going to be your fallback in case these Airbnb things. First of all, if we have another pandemic, or if the jurisdiction disallows them or anything like that, if it's not a good deal as a regular rental, then don't buy it. You follow what I'm saying? As a regular investment, doesn't fit the criteria of the regular investments like what we talked about today, then don't buy it. That would be my advice. If you can't make money, a reasonable return renting it out long term, then I wouldn't buy it based on Airbnb. It seems really risky. That's just my advice. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Any other questions or anything, guys? Don't be shy. Any other questions?
It's a lot of information, Ryan, you're giving us today.
I know, and I hate doing this one when it's not in person, because I like to see your glassed over eyes in person. This is hard. And it's really, it is boring, but because it's numbers, and I happen to like numbers, but I know a lot of people don't.
It's not boring at all. This is your future. This is your retirement. You really need to pay attention to this.
Yeah, and I did it from the angle of there being a realtor, but really it's for you guys too. I mean, that's
Eventually, right now, I can't. I'm not able to do it, but I would like to eventually, with all this knowledge and all this, to be able to invest, but for myself. Like, even if I do one at a time, but I'm going to be 46 and I want to learn more so that I can look out for the years to come so that I can retire comfortably, you know?
Right. You guys, you can go out, but depending on what you want to do, and this is what my brother does. He goes out in the boonies and he buys places for $50,000, $60,000 that rent for $800 a month. Like we talked about, a roof has a value, $800 a month. He goes out and buys these, 2-3 bedroom places out in Sumter County and all these different places. And he goes out and buys these properties for cheap. And he tries to buy one a year, one every 2 years. And he buys these houses and they just keep racking up. And you can either finance them and pay them off slowly and not take a return, or you can buy them more slowly and buy them cash and keep the return. So it's up to you guys. But that's one way it's a heck of a retirement one day, to just own 30 houses that make you $800 each a month. It's pretty solid. So, all right, guys, if you guys don't have any more questions or anything, awesome. We'll call it a day.
Hey, Ryan, where will we print out everything that you showed us today?
On your computer, I guess. I sent it to you.
Okay.
Or did I not send it to you? No, I didn't send it to you. I can send it to you. If you want a copy of it, let me know. I'll send it to you. I don't want to send it to everybody.
I appreciate it.
You bet. We normally have big paper handouts when we do this in person, this training I do every year in person.
Should we email you?
Yeah, just email me. Please don't text me. Email me.
You can attach it to the messages, the file.
I love young people. Thank you. I sent you the investor questionnaire, and it's on our paperless pipeline also under the reference tab. How do I do this? It's a PDF, so it's not in.
There's a file button next to the messages. Click on the file and you can just attach it from your computer. Or you can just drop it in there.
There's a file button next to my messages, like chat?
Yes.
Yes.
There's not a file button on mine. Oh, there is. Okay. Hold on. I'm going to send it to everybody right now. Oh, I successfully sent. You guys should have access to it now.
Wow, thank you.
All right, Martha Elena needs a warehouse, minimum 6,000 square feet, Orlando or vicinity. If you guys know of anything. All right, guys. Well, thank you all. Enjoy that. If you want that, did everybody get that sheet in the chat?
I didn't get it.
Check the chat box.
there.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
Everybody can open that and download it to their computer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, great job, everybody. Good to see you all.
Thank
Let
you.
me know if there's anything you need.